Pastor James Nganga, he's in the news again. Not the good news that pastors normally spread. Well, the controversial televangelist of Neno Evangelism Center is accused of defrauding a businessman of 3.6 million shillings. Nganga failed to turn up in court today. Nairobi Central Station police boss Stanley Atavachi confirmed that following Nganga's arrest and release on police bond, he was to appear at the Milimani Law Courts, but that was not to be. And as Mel Miendo reports, 3 years later, and the case is still ongoing.
Confusion reigns in a case where yet again controversial pastor James Nganga was arrested, this time for allegedly defrauding a businessman 3.6 million shillings. Nganga, who was at the Central Police Station on Wednesday, 3rd April 2019, was released on a police bond the same day. NTV spoke to OCPD Central Police Station, who asserted that Nganga was to be charged in court on Friday. However,
my client was summoned to Central Police Station 3 days ago, and he was told that he would appear in court today, and we objected.
And taking to social media, Nganga hit out at the media for what he called exaggeration about what he faces as an accused person.
Na ningetaka nao serikali ya Kenya iangalie why Nganga. Ningetaka wale mko kwa mamlaka why Nganga.
The 3.6 million shillings fraud case is about a property in Karen. Documents seen by NTV on the lease agreement on the property between Nganga and businessman Wickson Njoroge indeed show that Nganga received 3.6 million in April 2016. The one-year lease agreement was for a 17-bed residential property in Karen, Nairobi, with Nganga as the landlord and Njoroge as the tenant. According to the lease documents, Nganga and his client agreed that, and I quote, upon the tenant paying the rent and performing agreements on the part of the tenant, may quietly possess and enjoy the property during the tenancy without any unlawful interruption from the landlord, end of quote. 450,000 shillings was to be paid per month, which the complainant paid for 6 months, plus 2 months deposit as seen here in an acknowledgement of receiving 3.6 million by the landlord, James Nganga. The agreement further states, and I quote, if the lease agreement is terminated by reason of breach of the lease agreement by the landlord is to refund any money paid in advance of the breach date, end of quote. Businessman Wickson Njoroge, through his lawyers, did indeed terminate the lease, serving a termination letter to Nganga through his lawyers 8 days after the lease agreement and payments were made. The reason for termination cited here is, and I quote, our client has never occupied the house and would like to return the occupation of the house immediately. It is our client's lawful expectation of the refund of the remainder of the monies paid, being deposit amount and rent paid for 3 months amounting to 2.7 million, payable within 5 days of receipt of this letter, end of quote. On 18th April 2016, 4 days after the termination letter, Nganga's lawyers agreed to the refund of 2.7 million, stating, and I quote, the deposit will be refunded in accordance with the provision of the agreement, end of quote. 3 years later, businessman Wickson Njoroge is yet to receive his payments, with Nganga's lawyers now saying that their client does not have a case to answer in the criminal court. Demand letters from Njoroge's lawyers have been written to Nganga and his lawyers over the years, but no response has since been accorded them, according to Njoroge's lawyers. Mel Miendo, NTV.